welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk with Encore. Today, the focus of our coffee talk is on unconscious bias. Well, like it or not, every one of us has biases, and it's not possible to go through life without being influenced by the world around us. Unfortunately, those biases can affect our behavior and impact the delivery of healthcare to our patients. But a good thing, though, is that the more we think about things and learn from the perspective of others, the less likely these unconscious biases are going to impact the quality of care that our patients need and deserve.
An unconscious bias is just that. It's an unconscious thought that we have that we don't even realize that we're having. And when it comes to day-to-day life, our brains process information so quickly and it's so automatic that a lot of times we don't even realize what's happening. And in the case of unconscious bias, we hear these stereotypes that are unfortunately everywhere, and that's what our brain learns to be true. And so when we see someone who fits that stereotype, whether it be at the mall or someone who comes into our clinic, our brain takes that information and makes these quick unconscious thoughts without us even kind of having the time or realizing that we need to have a more active thought process with these situations.
Sometimes I think it takes some of the stress out of it when we're trying to understand our honest thought process if we remove the human aspect from it. And so I like to ask people to think about dogs that you've met in your life. And if you were to walk in a room and there was a Chihuahua, a Labrador, and a Rottweiler, which one would you expect to come up and lick you? And which one would you be afraid that might come up and bite you? And unfortunately, we have that gut instinct that tells us that one of those things we need to be aware of. That's an unconscious bias. That is, our brain has looked at that room and it's made that snap decision, and we didn't have any choice in it. It's not something that we intentionally said, I hate all Rottweilers, right? But our brain had to make a decision, and it makes it very quickly. And that's okay sometimes. When it's not okay is when it starts to affect healthcare. And when it happens to healthcare professionals and we're making those snap decisions, it can have dangerous effects.
It can. And Kelly, something you said kind of really struck a chord with me when you said that we need to actively process information. I think that that's really important. So, as healthcare providers, we really need to focus in on, treating each patient as an individual and not necessarily a group or a demographic of people. So, this can really kind of translate into, providers not giving the best possible care to every single patient. In cultures where, there's a lot of family involvement and they're coming into our buildings and our facilities to be with their loved ones, and how that dynamic can really impact clinical decision-making and maybe not always help the clinical decision-making process, but maybe hinder it based on our healthcare perceptions of what that cultural may believe. So really making sure as healthcare providers, we're incorporating whatever their religious or their culture beliefs and values into their treatment plan. So a lot of the times we're, feeling responsible because we're providing a service and coming up with the treatment plan. But really, we have to really remember that it's the patient's plan of care and their treatment plan. So really taking those things into consideration. Maybe a patient in our clinics don't necessarily want whatever type of technique or treatment strategy we would suggest. So perhaps maybe it's not even offered. That can really affect outcomes. So going up from the highest hierarchy, from the physician down to the everyday caregivers, making sure that we are taking into those cultural and those values of each and every patient. So ongoing poor experiences in a healthcare setting may potentially cause our patients to not seek medical care in the future, and obviously that will really impact their overall quality of life and make them not seek medical attention.
Wow, isn't that the case? I mean, really, bias, it's not something that we can get away from, but we can become more aware of it and really, make a difference in how we interact with our patients with that awareness. The good thing, though, is it is absolutely possible to overcome unconscious bias in healthcare. And really, we do that by recognizing stereotypes that we place on groups, those groups being things like race and ethnicity, age, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. I mean, there's so many different groups and factors, but that awareness makes a significant difference in what we do, when we're interacting with our patients. And then once those stereotypes are then recognized, we can really make a conscious effort to minimize those factors that affect those outcomes by applying those, in-person and person-centered care approaches. That's really what it's all about, is making those personal connections with our patients and really making a difference in what we're doing with our patients and for our patients based on what they need and what they want. So really, it is up to each of us to recognize the biases that we have, but then work toward educating ourselves and really raising awareness about people and situations that are different than ourselves. So then using this approach can lead to consistently positive and meaningful interactions for both the patient and the clinician. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today to hear about the impact unconscious bias can have in healthcare and what we can do to move forward with a more positive, bias-free patient engagement experience. We look forward to having you tune in again for our next episode of Coffee Talk with Encore.